Joining me now, Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, you're hearing the stories of hostages who are being returned, and yet there are so many others, including particularly men. And we're learning from some new reporting tonight, Congressman Barak Ravid, who is a CNN foreign policy analyst. He's reporting that his sources are telling him that Israel will not agree to any future deal until all of the women and children under this current deal are released. And there's only 1 day left of this extension. What's your reaction to that reporting tonight?
Thanks for having me on, Laura. I'm not going to second guess the Israeli cabinet's structuring of these negotiations. If this is the leverage they think they need to get the women and children home within the next 24 hours, then I support that. And I think to myself, as you were having this conversation of the meeting I had yesterday morning with the families of the hostages, they had flown from Tel Aviv to Boston. And in the time of that flight, one of them was able to show me 3 pictures of her family members who had been released. And it was a joyous occasion for her. And yet there was another family member with them, an orthopedic surgeon, who for the first 27 days after October 7th had thought that her sister, a 27-year-old at the music festival, had been taken hostage as well, and she had been working with the other families to secure her release. Unfortunately, after day 27, they found out that she had in fact been murdered. And it had taken 27 days because her body had been mutilated by Hamas. And yet she was still there with the family. She had traveled to the United States. She was continuing to advocate for medical care for the hostages. And it speaks to me of the strength and beauty of the Israeli spirit in the face of these atrocities, and what we in the United States owe to our close ally in terms of not just military and financial support, but also moral support in rejecting these misguided calls for a ceasefire that rightfully should be directed towards Hamas, the entity that is an internationally recognized terrorist organization that walked through the last ceasefire on October 7th to murder 1,400 civilians, and that has promised to do so again, absent any military retaliation. So we need to be supporting Israel, not just in this round of negotiations over hostages, but also in the latitude they need to resume military operations in the south.
You know, it strikes me that some of the criticism surrounding Israel is, in fact, also about the conversations about the civilians in Gaza, the Palestinians who are suffering not only under the reign of Hamas, but the reign of the bombardments in response to what Hamas has done in Israel. As an ally, obviously the alliance is important to the Biden-Harris administration, to the government, to the United States more broadly. Is it truly misguided, though, to approach Israel with a conversation about how best to specifically target particular areas as opposed to the broader scope of civilians?
It's misguided to call for a ceasefire that would be a unilateral ceasefire that only one side would respect.
Okay.
That's not a ceasefire. That is handcuffing our ally in the face of a terrorist organization that has promised to take more hostages. But to your point, Laura, you're absolutely right. We should always expect our allies to uphold the law of armed conflict. We have been in close consultation multiple times a day with their war cabinet on better surgical targeting, on humanitarian corridors between the north and the south, on allowing more delivery trucks in through the Rafah crossing from Egypt, all of which President Biden has advanced through diplomacy, not just with Egypt, but with Qatar and with Saudi Arabia as well. And so the president deserves a tremendous amount of credit for really a masterclass in statesmanship over these last 60 days in navigating a tightrope between those who are calling for a ceasefire on the left, which would really benefit Hamas, and also those on the right calling for escalation against Iran directly, which would open up new fronts in the war for Israel without advancing its security or our own.
You know, between maybe the right and the left, sort of smack dab in the kind of a increasing middle, are conversations about aid. Yes. To Israel and just how much to provide. We know, of course, what's going on in Ukraine, and we can't forget about the fact that there is an ongoing invasion and war there. You and I have spoken about this. You yourself are a veteran. You're very wisely in tune with what's going on. On the issue of aid in particular, are you seeing a universal support for continued aid, and in what form?
Universal, no, but forward progress, yes. And I am optimistic that within the next several weeks, we can pass the supplemental security package that the president has proposed. And that would be standing with democracies as they fight against tyranny in Ukraine, as they fight against totalitarianism in the Indo-Pacific and Chinese aggression, as they fight against terror, of course, in the Middle East with aid to Israel, and also investing in border security and making policy changes to enhance border security here in the United States.
Is that part of a condition, then, you're saying, with the aid, or is that the conversation?
That originally the president asked for more money for border security, and the Republicans have responded with, we want border security policy changes as well as part of this package. I support that. I think that we should make those changes in negotiation with the Republicans. Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans are passing paper back and forth right now on that. I think an asylum change, for example, is likely. And that's a triple win. That's a win for border security. That's a win for Ukraine. That's a win for Israel. And it's really about the United States standing with our allies overseas.
Well, we'll see how this all comes out. I mean, obviously, you've got that tiered system going forward with that can that was kicked down the road with the government aversion. But the idea of conditioning aid and having the alliance, I do wonder if it can be consistent in the end. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
That was Congressman Jake Auchincloss, everyone. Now the question, of course,